oh my God, if I breathe in, I'm going to die. And the minute I said, like, I was going to die, I was boom out of my body and watching it sink. My next conscious memory is I'm in this place that seems like it's mist and clouds. And I can tell there's like a being to my left, yet I don't see a body in myself or this being. And I just remember feeling this profound love that I didn't even know existed. It was literally, especially the last month, all I keep getting, and even my family had some profound experience, is it's go time. Like
Yeah.
there's no turning back, and it's going to accelerate.
I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of The Soul Inspired. Today I have Loreli Drache with us. She has had 5 near-death experiences. We're going to talk about some of those. Also, she's had out-of-body experiences and spiritual communications, and probably the list can go on, as I've already kind of looked at her bio and seen all the different things that you've been going through in your life. So I want to first say thank you so much for taking the time with me tonight. Like I said before we started, for being here on The Soul Inspired.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
I appreciate it. And the only thing is I do dive in usually relatively quick and ask you a little bit about little Lorelei, the beginning time of your life when you first came into this world. Were you always the way you are now, or was there a moment in your life that things shifted?
Well, I remember from very young, my mother always said I was an old soul. You couldn't tell me anything. And I always played what they call, like I always tried to give the opposite perception, no matter what was going on. Drove my mother crazy, even from a young child. But, it's hard to gauge that because my first near death experience was at 7. So it's kind of a little hard to go, well, yeah, I was always like this. But I don't know. Definitely, have change throughout each experience and each thing with the expanded awareness. Little Lorelei, I would have to say, was very innocent, naive of the world, very open, very loving. I had a little bit of what you would call an abusive childhood, so to speak, just different things going on. And sibling things. But so the near death at 7 kind of made it even harder because like, you were immersed in this pure love and you come back to people that are, have alcohol issues, verbal abuse, those type of things. And I grew up in a farming hunting community and that just didn't sit right with me when I came back. So
Wow. Okay. So thank you. So you said age 7 was your first NDE, and we can jump into that in a moment. So it sounds like, so what you're saying is that you were an innocent child. You, the spiritual experiences seem to have started at age 7 then, from what you're saying, because that was your first experience. And were you raised in any type of religious environment?
yeah, well, my grandfather was very, very religious. He actually wanted to become a priest. But my mother and my father, not so much. I mean, they used to take us to church, but trying to get 5 kids in church, and especially once they had me, it was like,
Right.
then we only started going to weddings, funerals, those type of things. It just
Right.
did not work out. I was a very active, all over the place child. So that didn't last too long. And with my near death experience at 7, I and it's funny how this comes for full circle, but I came back from it going, Mom, I want to be a priest. I'm supposed to teach people. And she's like, honey, in our religion, women can't be priests. And I said, well, then it's not my religion. Nature is my church, Mom. And after I said that, she left me alone about going to church. I spent full days in the woods because we lived on almost 200 acres. So
Oh, wow.
where I spent all my time instead.
So you wanted to be around the environment and
Mhm.
in nature and things like that. You were kind of,
Well, yeah,
yeah.
because I learned like kind of the only truth in this illusion is like the beauty and the naturalness of like nature is the most authentic thing here. That's
Right.
how it is and it presents.
So you're age 7.
Mhm.
And let's lead up a little bit to what happened. So if you want to give a little details of what was going up to that point, I never know why someone's had an NDE. Everybody's had so many different experiences I've talked to. So, so what was going on with you at age 7, and how did this experience happen?
Well, this particular experience happened. Like I said, I grew up on 191 acres in rural Wisconsin. My grandfather's farm was across the street. That's originally why my parents took this farm. And then my uncle, when he retired off that farm, he had inherited it. He took the house next to it. So a lot of our family lived there. So that particular day, my aunt and uncle came over. They spent a lot of time on our farm and with us. They didn't have a lot of property after that. And they came over, and my mother was cooking supper. But my brother wanted to go check. It must have been spring because he wanted to go check if the bluegills were spawning. We had like 5 natural spring fed ponds because our property used to be a quarry. Part of it was.
Wow.
So that's what led up to it. He wanted to go down there. My mother wanted me out from under her feet and said, "Take your sister with you."
Mm.
Yeah. So that was the details leading up to it. It was about a mile walk down there. And then we went to like what we would call, I think is like the 3rd and 4th pond. They were combined in the spring when everything melted, they would be combined. And that's important to the story. But yeah, that was what led up to my drowning. It was a drowning
Oh my
experience.
goodness. Okay. So it ended up being a drowning experience. So you're only 7 years old. You're trying to stay out of your mom's way a little bit, and she tells was it a brother or a sibling?
Yeah,
She's
my
brother
brother
to take you down to the pond with him when he's
with
going
my
down
aunt and
there.
uncle. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. And yeah, you must have had a large piece of land to have all that. So I can kind of picture it. I had a good friend that lived out in Wisconsin. She's passed, but she used to tell, like, she sent me I'd see pictures of some of the land that she lived near, and it was just like, and yeah, a lot of hunting and all that kind of stuff
yeah.
goes on in that area. But um, so I can kind of get the picture in my mind. So you're down there at this pond, and what happens next? How did this come
Well, there's 2 entrances, as I mentioned. So they would actually go to what we would normally call the 3rd pond. And that's where, when in the spring it floods over, and that's where it's very shallow. So the bluegills lay their eggs there. So they went to check that and do a little fishing. And I asked my aunt to take me down the rest of the path to where the 4th pond was. They had built a makeshift pier out of, post and pallets. Then there was like a tiny pond next to it that where all the frogs spawned, and those are like my 2 favorite places. So I asked her to take me down there. She couldn't swim and she wasn't fond of the water, so she stayed up on the shoreline, and I went down the embankment and out onto the pier. And I was looking off to the left, and it must have been later afternoon, like I said, because she was cooking supper. Because the way the sun was hitting the water, it was starting to like lull and trance me. So I was worried I would fall in, right? So I moved to the other side and was watching the water. And that's when my aunt, she always had kind of like a separation anxiety from my uncle. She always had to know where he was and be
next?
near him. And so she's like, "Is it okay? I'm going to go check on your uncle for a minute." I'm like, "Sure, I'll be fine." And, people get a little weird about this, but it's farm kids take a lot of responsibility. And I was always, like I said, an old soul for my age, like very aware. That's why how this happened, I still do not know. And what's interesting is I don't have any memory even of how I got in the water, nor does it make sense to me because I was sinking feet first. Normally, if you would fall off, it'd be like a head dive. You know what I'm saying? But somehow, like I kept feeling called and pulled into the water. And after she left, my next memory is uh, becoming aware as I was sinking and bubbles coming out in front of my face as I was screaming. So there was this sheer moment of panic, but instantly I'm like, "Oh, that's my air. Oh my God. If I breathe in, I'm going to die." And the minute I said, like, I was going to die, I was boom out of my body and watching it sink. And then I was like, I would say 50 feet, enough above that I could see everyone in just the local vicinity. And then I instantly connected consciousness to my brother, who was thinking he could swim. He was trying to decide if he could swim or run to me faster. And I'm laughing because I'm like, you can't do either. It's weird. I was literally finding this funny. I had no concern for my body. But it was so interesting to hear and be like connected with their consciousness. And then I heard my uncle, and he was all like, "Oh my God, why'd you leave her? You know, they're gonna blame us." Those type of thoughts. My aunt must have heard me fall in, obviously, and yelled. And she was freaking out, thinking like, "How could she save me without us both drowning?" Because she was closest and could get to me fast. And so she determined if she hung on to the post, she could kind of like try to sweep me in and get a hold of me,
Mhm.
like, you know, just reach from there. Um, and so then I'm like, okay. And as I connected with each of them, and then I'm like, each of their thoughts, then I was like, it's like if I knew they were okay, I don't know. It was just weird. But then I rose even higher, and I connected to my mom, who was back in the kitchen, and she was cutting up vegetables and wondering if we caught anything, and like when we would be home, like would supper be ready by the time we got home. But it's like as soon as I checked on everyone, I was like completely gone from what I call the earth menu. I wasn't there. Um,
Wow. So
yeah.
you just to jump in really quick. So you breathe in this water. You know the end, you're gonna die. Did it seemed like you had the awareness that was about to happen as soon as you breathed it in. And the next thing you know, you're hearing the thoughts and the feelings or the ideas of your brother, your uncle, your aunt, what's going on. And you're finding it kind of funny, which is humorous. So you're kind of thinking, what, your sense of, it sounds like your sense of self or personality was still intact.
Yeah.
And then, and then you jump back with your mom or your mother, and she's in the kitchen and thinking of something completely different in regards to if you've caught any fish. Um, so, okay, so that happens. And so by the time you've seen your mother, that's when you decided to maybe go somewhere else?
Yes. Yes. As soon as I was in that space and knew she was okay, my next conscious memory is I'm in this place that seems like it's mist and clouds. Um, and I can tell there's like a being to my left, yet I don't see a body in myself or this being. And we're facing, like, I felt like an ant, and we're facing this huge archway, and it's off up to the left as well. And there's light, this brilliant light emanating from it, like as if you were standing in front of a locomotive, like all these LED lights coming at you. And it was bright white, then it went to yellow to orange to amber. And I just remember feeling this profound love that I didn't even know existed. It was a parental love times 1,000. Like whenever I reconnect to it, usually if I pull that energy in, I just tears just start pouring because it's just overwhelming. It's not describable in earthly words, right? Neither is the light as far as how brilliant it was. And I remember thinking, see, there's still earthly thoughts. I was like, how is this not blinding me? You know what I mean? Like, how am I able? I like didn't want to look because I'm like, this light should hurt my eye. I
Hmm.
remember that thought. And then there was like, I could tell there was a being coming through there, but all I could see was like an outline of coming through this light. And that I realized like the light was coming from it. And there was this conversation. And I know I was being shown things about my life because I remember arguing, going, "You can't make me go back to that. No, no, no." And it felt literally, if I were to put it in earth terms, it felt like half an eternity that this went on. That I'm like, no, no matter what they showed me, no matter what they said, I'm like, I am not going back. Absolutely not.
Wow.
So I found that interesting. And then it was, as that went on, I have a distinct memory of it was like the Truman Show. It's the only thing I can compare it to. Like when he gets on the mic and starts talking to him directly when he realizes what's going on. And this big booming male voice said, "You have more to do. You must go back." It was very authoritative. And I was like, okay, like you knew right away there was no arguing with this voice. And I remember how small I felt that too. But also, like I said, personality traits, I'm very stubborn. I was like, oh, they can make me go back to my body, but they can't make me get into it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm like, there's a
So you're
clause.
you're already you're already planning an escape. You're like they're gonna try, but I got this
Yeah,
trick.
and
Meanwhile,
so
it could probably understand your thoughts, which is
right,
hilarious, right?
exactly. Like it's just, that's
Yeah.
what the other part about it that's so funny. And so instantly I'm back looking at my body, and my body that my uncle was carrying it up and then laid it on its side up on the embankment. And I remember him laying on the side trying to see if there's water or anything, but there was nothing wrong with my body. There was no physical effects. The only thing I do remember is I didn't really talk. I'm pretty sure I didn't talk to the next day. And that's when I was telling my brother, like, I asked him, I said, like, why would you think you could run to me faster or swim? I said, you can't do either. I literally asked about it. I remember that because how white he turned and his jaw dropped. And I think he yelled for my mom. And I
Yeah.
told my mom, I died, because overnight, all this stuff kept coming back to me, I didn't sleep well. Like I kept having visions of it all. So like, I knew why I died,
Wow.
but because my family had other like paranormal and spiritual experiences prior to even my birth, there wasn't really a question about those kind of things, which I'm very blessed for that kind of support. You know what I mean?
You had spiritual based beliefs going on already from
Right. I wouldn't say their beliefs, but just experiences. Like, well, they
experiences.
thought they were like extraterrestrial, and we had like Sasquatch experiences. And so had the neighbors. There was like these big floating orbs, which later I learned that's how Sasquatch travel. But I'm just saying, like, there was all these different things and different crafts they had seen. And I later found out only because my mom didn't want me to feel so like alienated that, my dad could clearly see spirits. Like sometimes they would fully manifest like a regular person to him.
Wow.
Um, so there was all of that. So they didn't quite question, like they're like anything can happen. We don't know anymore.
Right.
you know?
So
Yeah.
you had some support. It wasn't like let's send her to get tested
Right.
and put her into a
Right.
white room kind of thing. So
Exactly.
so it's interesting. Thanks for sharing that first one. I appreciate it. So when you went back, so just really quickly, you went back, they had pulled your body up. Do you recall going back into your body, or were you just part of the
No,
body at
that's
that?
what I was going to tell you. Yes, thank you. No, in fact, like I stayed with it. Like I've since learned through other spiritual experiences, like when babies are preparing to come into the world, like that's how I could sense them. They just like kind of they're in the vicinity, they're in the energy field, but not connect like in the body, right? And so it was similar to that. Like for a year, I swear I was like disconnected in that sense. Like I refused to like fully integrate.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then did you feel at all from that day on for a few days off? Did anything feel different like when you came back? I mean, obviously you might be
Yeah.
like, what was that? And you might have had to start putting that together, but you're only 7. That 7, I always say when kids have these experiences, it's a little different because I remember when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, everything you learn, you just think everyone else went through. Like that, I mean,
Yes.
right? You just be like, oh yeah, okay, I'm just experiencing something that Johnny down the road went through too. Right. So I could see that being in a little 7-year-old to think, okay, whatever that was, it was interesting, but it was just something I went through.
Exactly. Like I didn't think it was anything special. I didn't think anything about it. I just kind of tucked it away. And then, all the abilities started to surface, like prophetic dreams to the point nobody could deny. They're like, well, Lori said so, don't risk it, things like that. And, and then the scariest one that I have, it was scary for a 7-year-old is I could tell when people were about to die. I would get like this super it's weird energy pain in my stomach. And if I looked at them, they looked like they were like wax dummies, like because the soul was preparing to leave. So they looked slightly glassy and melty is the best way I could put it. Like I could tell when their spirit energy was leaving their body, and they'd always die within like 2 weeks. And I finally said, I
Wow.
can't see that. This is not something, I want. It very much freaked me out. And so that kind of went away. I can still, I'm a medical intuitive, I guess that's the label you'd have to throw at it. So I still sense things in people's body, but like, I don't see that. Thankfully, I just don't. Well, yeah, because I don't want to run around going, oh, you're going to die. Oh, you're going to, that's not,
Right.
they want
Yeah.
to, yeah. And
What
later, it was positive. Like I could tell when people were going to be pregnant within the next year, what sex they were going to have. And those things. I'd rather do that.
Yeah, that seems a little more exciting. It's interesting what you just said though. So this is all brand new fresh to me, but I just recently lost my 16-year-old dog. Uh, so yeah, she was quite old for a dog, but
Oh,
I wasn't the one that took her in to get her put down. And what happened was, I don't want to talk too much about me, but it's just weird what you just said. Not weird, it's interesting, that feeling in your stomach, because I was told that the catheter was put in and they were going to put her down soon. At that moment, I didn't feel anything. I was sad, but I didn't feel anything. And I remember standing up, I was just crying the whole day. I remember standing up out of my bed, and all of a sudden, this overwhelming, uh, gut wrenched sorrow was in my stomach and in my chest. And I went, oh, and I like couldn't like handle it. And then I got a message within a minute, within 30 seconds even, that she just passed. And I I was overwhelmed by that, because it's like I felt her. I don't think that she felt pain. It was my sorrow of the pain of knowing she was gonna go. And I was feeling that. And I know I'm an empath, so that was the first time I've ever experienced that, something that hard. And this just happened less than a week ago. So I'm still recovering from it.
I'm
So
so sorry.
yeah,
Was she a medium-sized dog?
yeah, she was like a
Like like a
like
like
like a small
I was
medium.
seeing a
Like
fluff.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because all of a
yeah,
sudden when you started talking about her, I was seeing this image and I'm like, oh, okay. So I just
yeah,
thought, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. She wasn't like a little like Chihuahua or something. She had some
Right.
length to her.
Yeah.
But
Yep,
she
yep,
was
yep.
still small. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know she's in a better place, because she was not functioning right anymore. But it was a tough thing. But it's interesting how you said the stomach. I was just interviewing someone earlier
Yeah.
about how
Well, 'cause you feel that departure of that energy. Like I said, a lot of
Mhm.
them, like their soul had already kind of left, but the body would keep, still playing out the final moments, is how
Right.
I see it. So, yeah, I would sense like, oh, they've already left the building, even though their physicality hadn't yet, Yeah.
Right. And you were sensing that so young. So that was at 7. Then you told me that then you started seeing the world a little different. You wanted to be out in nature and everything was like, and how did you go through this 4 more times? Like what on earth? What are you doing? Like what? So
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that because like I had a discussion with somebody last night, and they're like, "Don't you realize they had this huge, profound experience at the IANS conference last year in Washington D.C." And they're like, "Don't you realize you had another idea?" I'm like, "I'm not adding another one to the list to look like I'm trying to chick. But I think it's just because I so easily can leave my body. You know what I'm
mm,
saying? So the minute it's in distress, I'm like, "I'm here." They're like, "Nope, not
yeah.
time yet." Like I keep checking, "Can I come home yet?"
Right. And I wonder sometimes if, because you had an NDE at such a young age and you discovered how we are more than, our suits, that now it's almost like, oh, it's old hat. I can do that. I know how to do it. So I'm just going to do it again. Now, again, I don't know what your other experiences and how they led up, but I would think that you have more of a kind of a guideline of how to jump out. So,
Mm.
yeah.
There's one more thing I want to share about my 7-year-old experience because I
Mhm.
remember telling my mother and trying to explain it to her, and the analogy that spirit gave me, and I think other people have spoke this since, I'm not sure because um but they literally said a butterfly. Like we're in the larval stage of spiritual evolution, and like right now I feel we're in the chrysalis moment where we're rearranging our DNA and becoming these more light bodied beings. And then, of course, when we leave, we fly. But that's the analogy that they literally gave me to come back with to explain how our soul's evolution works.
Wow. So our soul is evolving much like human evolution. Our soul is evolving.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, that's beautiful. And that was a message you knew at that age. Wow. That's pretty incredible. I mean, 7 is young. And I just interviewed a gentleman named AJ Parr, great guy, nice guy.
Oh yeah, I've been
Yeah.
interviewed him a few times. Yeah,
Yeah. And how he has studied child NDEs. So we got
yeah. I
into
mean, his
conversation
book
about
he
that.
just released actually. My
Yeah.
account, childhood account. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's amazing. So okay, so you had that experience. Did it affect So when was the let me get what was the age of the next one? I'm curious.
And that's how I was 28.
28.
So
So from 7 to 28,
yeah. What a journey.
were you just trying to fit in at this point? Were you trying to be part
Kind
of
of,
society?
yes. I remember so often there people would say you're weird in a good way. Like I was friends with everybody per se, but the only problem I have to say with younger me and that even when I came back at first, like I remember having nobody hate me for this, but I remember having kind of a dislike of humans. Like I had seen
Mm.
all the destruction and chaos and suffering they created for themselves and for the earth. So coming back, I was like, I knew I came back to help the earth and the animals and things. Like it wasn't about people, like why I needed to return, at least from me, right? Um, so I remember thinking like, just so upset with them for like their lack of love and everything else. Like I couldn't understand it at 7. So I remember that it wasn't in a judgmental, unloving way. I just like I can't be that,
Mm.
Um, so it was kind of interesting. And the other thing that made my life very difficult is, and challenging in that way is and that's when like I feel like I came back to a different timeline because my family I recall being more loving before this, and after that there was like weird jealousies and like I said they were always trying to tell me I was a mailman's kid or I didn't fit and all of these different things. And it was really difficult and challenging because like I always wanted as a kid the gift like Wonder Woman's lasso to know the truth. And that's kind of what I came back with. I could tell and see both sides of everybody's story and why they were behaving the way they were and what wounds they had and if they were telling the truth or not, because our voice holds frequencies. You can tell when someone isn't being authentic. And often as a kid, I hadn't learned that discernment yet. I would call people out on it. Like, what do you mean? You're actually this, or you're actually thinking this, or
Mhm.
this is really what happened. Why are you, like I didn't understand. My mother used to tell me I was tactlessly honest. Let's just put it that way. So I had
Right.
to learn that gift of discernment, when to speak up and when not to. So it got me in some areas because, especially with adults that would like abuse their power or be lying, like, in school and stuff and like I wouldn't back down because it just wasn't always the smoothest ride. Let's just put it
Right.
that way.
Well, I can
Yeah,
understand that. I mean, I can relate to that. I can relate. I always say it in all my episodes. When I was a kid, I'd look around and wonder why everybody was being mean to each other. I never even had an NDE. Well, as far as I remember, I don't remember,
a lot
but
to at birth.
yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, I could something could have happened, but I just remember always feeling that same way. So you're talking, and I relate to what you're saying. And I can't imagine going through that experience, coming back and being like, what are people doing? Like I already questioned that, especially if you felt that love that you felt in the light when you had that experience. So you're 28, and what happens at 28? How did you get back into this situation?
okay. Well, this is one of those where like I have memories like afterwards that it was part of this experience. I tried for years to get pregnant and I wasn't able to, and I had finally gotten pregnant, and like I think it was like about 2 weeks, 3 weeks before my NDE, my grandmother, who was deceased, came to me in this like visitation. And she told me, she's like, this baby is not yours to keep. I am sorry. There will be more, and you are safe. You are okay. But just know this baby isn't yours to keep. And she showed me sitting in the clinic of where my OBGYN is, and then a calendar of the date. And that particular day, yep, I started bleeding very heavily with excruciating pain. My husband and my mother took me to the ER. I had to have an emergency DNC, which they didn't know anything about me. So they gave me too much anesthesia. Plus, I didn't know I was anemic. So the doctor, I actually worked at that hospital. He told me he almost lost me. He said I was bleeding out and I quit breathing. I remember coming to on a ventilator and they're like yelling at me, like not to try to rip everything out. Um, but I had the same after effects as my first one. Like I was calm. I was the one who was calm about the loss of the baby. I was the one that was consoling everybody else. And the other mother there that night almost didn't make it either, her and her baby. So my doctor was very stressed. I remember the next morning, like I felt healed. I didn't want the meds. The meds were actually making me sick. So I made him take them off at me. And that's when, since he knew me, he was screaming at me like, fine, you might bleed to death, but I don't care. I spent all night trying to save you. He was not happy with me. And I learned later, that I went and that I went home for healing. Like I remember being surrounded and being healed because they said I was supposed to have more children, which coincides with to this. I had the huge premonition at 20 before I even like was officially with my husband or anything that I was supposed to have this baby boy and my rainbow baby after this, because the doctor said, you need to try to have children right away while your body's still figuring it out. And so we had a son within a year's time. But the doctor confirmed exactly what I was told spiritually, that like my body was figuring out how to make a baby. Like the baby was a girl, her systems didn't interconnect, and that's why I lost her. Like they didn't know how to interconnect. So that verifies, what I was told in spirit, that I went home for healing to have children. There was no need to have like this huge experience to remember everything. It was just for healing.
Wow. Okay. So it was based around a miscarriage that you'd had
Yeah.
late, obviously. So I'm sorry to hear that happen. I mean, I know that you have an idea of a little further idea of what happens in life and that, but you're still human and the human experience, it can be difficult. So,
Yeah, I
and
think she was 3 months, so it wasn't like
yeah,
I was like 3 months along, but yeah,
yeah, it still
yeah,
affects people, right?
yeah.
So, and you came back with some effects again. So do you remember having any out of body experience from that or anything? Or do you remember?
No, no, just the feeling like I knew, and there was this like other utter peace. And in my further experiences, they showed that like I went home for healing, and that's all
Mhm.
it was about, you know.
Yeah.
Um, just because of the way I felt, and I had that same like I'm not connecting to body sensation, like all the same sensations. So I knew something had happened. And they're like, "Yeah, we almost lost you." I was like, "Well, that makes sense." Like,
Right.
okay, yeah.
Yeah. When we first started talking, you had mentioned that you've had OBEs and other experiences that are even some of them
Mhm.
more profound than even your NDEs. Out of your five NDEs, which one was the most profound that you think you've had, or do they all represent a part of your life that you can say, I was meant to experience that?
Um, well, obviously, my first one was the most, you know, um, profound in that sense of having all that connection and going to source. But my fourth one, I feel brought the most understanding, the most like I agreed to come back to share it. They kind of gave me the impression like the story of Lorelei ended. You're going back to be this divine conduit. You share
Mhm.
this, and you need to share your experience and speak the truth. Part of that remembrance was that okay, my mother's maiden name literally means preacher, churchman, and they showed me like energetically and all of these things. I think most of your audience would understand about ancestral things in quantum entanglement. So part of the reason, like I was balancing all this, or some people call it karmically or whatever, was because generations of my family had taught fire and brimstone, and I needed to come back to speak the true message. Do you know what I mean? So that was
Okay.
kind of it. Yeah,
Wow. And that
kind of.
and that was during
So,
that was your fourth
yeah,
experience.
I learned the power that the main takeaway from that was that like how reality is manifested, the power of words, thoughts, and intention. Because
Hmm.
that particular NDE was in part caused because they said at your level of light, like light frequency, you have to watch what you say and what you do because it'll manifest just instantly, or fairly instantly compared to other things in this realm. So I had made a joke in a near death experience group led by Ned Matinia. He runs the largest NDE group on Facebook. Somebody had put a meme of lame ways we died. So a lot of us were joking how we'd like to go next time. And I said, because I'm a humorous person, I said, I don't, I want to go like grandpa, not those screaming in his car. If you're familiar with the joke, grandpa died in his sleep driving, yeah. And so
Okay.
literally within like a week, I died in my sleep.
Holy smokes. So
Yes.
you kind
And
of
that's
manifested your own death.
like, I literally said I got called to the principal's office, and boy, did I get reamed out. And I said, I go, what do you want from me? Human means the dits. I'm not going to remember all this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Long
And
story, but it was a very, very profound event. And I learned a lot within it, and a lot came in after it. Like, how the packages start to unpack themselves. So yeah, that
yeah,
one
I've
I would
noticed
say.
that a lot with the people I talk to with the NDEs is a lot of times though they say like they come back and it's almost like it's hard to, I don't know if we can't experience or if we're not able to handle everything you've experienced. In fact,
Mhm.
I've come to the belief in just the short time I've talked to so many people that there are things that you may never remember because I don't know if the human, if we can actually comprehend it. So I think that some of it can help us in this incarnation or this realm that we're in. And those things can kind of start coming online a little bit as you come back. So you die in your sleep. This is I don't know what age this was at. This was
Uh, that particular one was 50.
50.
Was it?
Okay.
Yeah, it was 2021, January 2021.
And did you have like the typical, like, did you leave the body? Like, what was the experience like?
Well, I was having some autonomic nervous system issues leading up to this, and so I stopped breathing in my sleep. My next conscious memory is literally being in front of like my soul group, and the person I know to be my twin flame, like the people I know in real life, like look like how they would look, right? So my husband and my daughter were off to this side, my twin flame here, and my good friend here. It was like a shared death experience. I'll get to that part, but um, and it seems simultaneously because he's giving me a lecture about that level of light and how I created this and how words and all that. While she's saying, if you want that body, you have to get back in it now. And I'm like, yeah,
Mm.
okay, and this is part of it. Like, but remember on the first one, I was telling, like, no, you can't make me go back. Well, by my fourth one, I'm like, get me back in there. I've lived so many lifetimes to see what's going to happen. Like, I'm not missing a thing. I literally said that. So, and I'm like, and I called my body a vehicle. That was the interesting
Mm.
thing. And I even said, how do I start this vehicle? And they're like, you need to swallow. And my one other friend said that was part of her experience. I'd never heard that before, but that I needed to swallow. And once I swallowed, it was like I took this huge gas. And then it was like a horse kick to the chest as my heart started up. But then they go, you have to do a systems check. And I'm like, what? But then I understood, like, I had to like feel the energy and build the energy from my feet on my body. Because they asked me if I could move or sense anything. I'm like, I can't, nothing, there's nothing. And that was the most painful, what felt probably 20 seconds, but it felt like an eon experience of my life. It's like having your hand asleep, but your whole body. Can you imagine that happening at
Mm.
once? And
Right.
then I literally like, being from the medical profession, I would say I was probably in shock for like 20 minutes. I shook, like just literally my whole body in the bed. Like I shook for 20 minutes after that. But that's like the physicality of getting back in my body. But um, I thought it was very interesting, the terminology, and they were very insistent. Like this was like an Earth ship, like this is a vehicle to experience Earth. So I thought I never had that perception before that experience. Um, but yeah, they were going on about how words manifest, the power and intention behind them, even the meanings of the words, like the energy we've put into each word. Like I no longer say good morning because morning is to mourn the day, like it's mourn. So I always say good day. You don't have to be that, nah, but I'm just saying like, and it's probably why they gave me like my own words for different things because if each of these words has been fed an energy frequency, it is an energy frequency. So, and if you look at the English language, even how they were showing me was like most of our language is of lower vibration. It's like can't, don't, won't, all of these things. We don't realize how we speak. And I
Mm.
learned about how like the body and the energetic fields respond to those frequencies. When I came, they said that my voice will carry healing frequencies and source and light code that will help heal and activate people. That was another reason that I was to return and that I was coming back with that. But that all of ours do carry it, and we don't realize that how our words can affect because those are frequencies we're directing at people. like
Wow.
how we speak to ourselves and our body. I learned like body consciousness, like uh, in a profound experience, that uh, each organ it has its own personality, its own energy signature, its own energy agreement to be part of the body. It's like a separate thing trying to experience. There was just so much to it, but that was pretty profound. And and I remember there being a test, and my twin flame the next day said, "What happened to you? I felt your energy leave. I know you died or something." And he's like, and I had to perform this test with you. He's like, something about I had to drink from your body, or you had to create something for that. So he remembered part of it. And my good friend said she had a vision and she saw me laying in my bed. She contacted me the next day, like, what happened? So they had shared, it was part of the
Wow.
experience. And that really validated to me. And it really freaked me out because, like, I'm like, oh my God, I did die. What? Not again. Like
Yeah.
this time I'm like, what?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so
That
and,
is
and that was a lot to
fascinating.
integrate. It was that white misty area again. I tend to like that space. And sometimes I wonder if it's like more like how like cloud out the things I don't need to know. I don't know, like like everything just seems like white mist. Interesting.
Yeah.
And there was all these beings behind, the four that I knew, but they just look like energy bodies. Like I could sense the energy and things. But I just felt like there was this large like group of people. Like I said, I felt like I was being judged or yelled at. It was not fun. Not in a bad way, just like you should know better. And like I said, I'm a human body. I don't remember all these things. They don't understand that you don't carry all of this back with you.
It sounds the interesting thing I'm getting from you, and I'm a visualizer. I'm seeing um this group in the background watching, and it's almost like beings are observing your
Mhm.
experience. They're observing you coming and go, because you're on the brink of death. Are you coming? Are you
Mhm.
going? What's going on? And their observance is there. And then when you're jumping over into that side, you're now seeing it, but then you come back here. I'm gonna just be real with you here. It's so fascinating hearing you talk about this stuff. And I know you've spoke many times, right? But for me, this is the first time I've heard your story. And when you're talking about it, and I don't think I'll ever get sick of this. I get this with all the NDE people I talk to. There's such a, it's such a sure thing that this happened to the people who've experienced it. And my experience always was the reason I went through such anxiety as a young kid was I was scared to death. I thought we just turned to dust. And I had convinced myself this. And so I was going through my day to days just thinking, oh my God, I just got to hold on. What do I got now? What disease is this? And you're just trying to figure it out. And I think that's where a lot of health anxiety comes from with people. And to talk to people who've experienced something non-earthly and to see the absolute that you have in the way that you're conducting what you're saying is it's profound to me because like a lot of the times they'll ask the question during these episodes is, are you afraid of death? And some of them will laugh at me or they might not laugh at me, but it's kind of a funny joke. It's kind of like a funny question because they've experienced this. What I will ask you is, with the experiences you've shared already, did those experiences feel as real as us talking right now?
Oh yeah, and like some of them seem more real than what this is. Like this feels like a dream that you're coming back to. Like when you get to the other side, you're like, oh God, that was a terrible dream. Sorry, like okay, oh good. Like there's like 1,000 weights lifted off of you that you realize none of it like really happened. It was just like an experience. Um, so yeah, it actually feels more real there than here, but that's
Wow. Yeah, and I've had people say that, and then I started coming to this conclusion in my mind that we come here and we incarnate and we have our dreams. We sleep, we go to sleep, and when you have that really bad dream and you wake up and you go, "Oh God, thank God that was a dream. I don't know what that was." There are people who experience that when they die, and they
yeah.
go, well, "Are we
Mhm.
the dream of the soul?" And it just goes down this whole
Yeah,
other thing. Um,
I had a rabbit hole experience with that. I can share in a minute if you'd like, but yeah.
no, I'd love to hear it because you did mention
Well,
that there was an experience you had that was a little more profound. I don't know if that's the same
oh,
thing.
that no, that's a different one. Like I said, I've had a few through the since 2019, but this particular one, I had revisited some health issues that I hadn't had in like 10 years. I'm like, why is this going back? And it just wasn't leaving. And I got to the point I was frustrated. I'm like, I agreed to come back here to be of service. I literally was yelling. I was like, I agreed to come back here to be of service. If I can't be of service if this body keeps doing this. And I was yelling. I'm like, either you fix me and help me be of service, or get me the hell out of here. I was really mad.
Get me a new
But,
vehicle.
and yeah, and I
Yeah.
think I had been praying to Archangel Michael or Raphael, but also Archangel Michael just literally pulled me out of body. And he said to me, he's like, I cannot. He's like, I can't change what you've already pulled into your experience. I can only relieve your attachment to it so it moves through your experience faster. Um, and so, and then I realized all the times I attached to things instead of letting them go, like whether it was, because they told me there's certain things we plan in our life, but whether we experience them, like say as a sniffle or pneumonia, is how much energy we feed to it and attach. But forgive me, that's a little different story than what I planned to tell. That's why I was like, oh, wait, why am I telling this one? But I must have was supposed to. But the one that pertains to what and I were talking about, I also had one where I was questioning some things, got pulled out of body. And I was told that this is what they call Project Dreamscape. And that I chose to come back to like the lowest frequency of the dreamscape to help like my other family become aware so that they could start, because I saw they were in so much suffering and chaos because they didn't realize that, to me, like they always show me this is like a simulation, it's a dream type sequence. And so they didn't have that spiritual awareness. So they kept creating that suffering and chaos. But they told me like there was this whole long thing, and it still messes with my mind on this, because they told me that Project Dreamscape, that there are some people who are, their consciousness is projected here, which makes sense because I call this a vehicle, right? And that they couldn't just naturally pull them out of it because their electrical, like, their nerves and their synapses their neural cortex, they said, had become too enmeshed with it that they couldn't just eject them, because the ones that they tried to become catatonic, that they had to become awake and aware within the dream before they could, move to a higher consciousness, let's say, or be removed from that particular phase. And that really messed with me because up until that point, I thought everyone was here the same, projected the same. And the more work I do, I understand that that's not the case, but in the more experiences I've had, that like not everybody's consciousness is here the same. And that's too far out for some people, and that's okay. But that was one of my experiences. So I was like, because I always wondered if this was like the dream, because both of my daughters have had NDEs, and one had pre-birth and in between life memories. And they both told me that like we're reliving our most favorite experiences. And I had a recent knowing download about that remembrance of like, I always say we're ghosting our own timelines when it comes to like these weird glitches, because I was showed that, but they also are like, well, you're choosing to relive your best life. That's hence the deja vu's and all of those things. And to be able to live different choices and more loving choices for yourself. And that made sense to me because when my mother passed away, I had like a shared thing where she had showed me like, instead of staying with my dad, she left and she went to the city, and she like was extremely intelligent, and like she got some job with some corporation. Like she had this whole beautiful life, which was a choice she had always wanted to make. And I remember her telling me, what are you doing here? You can't be here. just wait, I can't talk to you in front of other people. And then she explained to me, all of this. So I've had a lot of what you would call quantum interdimensional experiences, and that can really make your mind go in different, like I said, rabbit holes of it. But they were more validation of other things I had experienced that helped me understand more that we are more fluid. Like my understanding of all of this is like we each create our own experience, our own timelines. We share these experiences through quantum entanglement. And quantum physics obviously is starting to prove some of that. But that's why, like, when people argue, like, I experienced this, or, like, even the Mandela effects. When I took a Mandela effects test, I scored 76 because there are so many things that are not from the original timeline I would say I started with.
Right.
And this is where the stuff, people.
I went down that Mandela rabbit hole, and
Yes,
I had to
yes.
get out of it quick because I was starting to bring some of my friends in it, and they were just like, no, no, what? And then they were like saying, okay, I must be going crazy. Like there's no, and I'm like, okay, I think we just, I'll stop.
Well, and,
This is
people
because
want
this
to,
is out of control.
yeah, people want to put it off to like false memories and things. But like my mother, I never really seen her cry, and that's the Nelson and Mandela for me died at 80s in prison, and I remember distinctly because I was sitting on the floor looking at my mom, and she was crying, and I'm like, I'd never seen her cry, and I was wondering, and she's like, it's so unfair, and all this other stuff, and she explained to me that he died and everything that was happening, and because I think it was on the news. So that's why it's clearly embedded in my mind. I know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Same with like I took a trip to Ellis Island, and the museum and the statue and everything were all on Ellis Island. Now it's on Liberty Island, and the museum's on Ellis Island, and all this other stuff. Those type of things, those big major things that you can't deny yourself. I'm like, okay, well,
Right.
but I always say like I'm a timeline transplant because I literally feel like each time that I have things died. Like things have been different. Like I literally switched to a different frequency. Like, there's some people who believe, oh, maybe you died in that timeline and you just switched over and all those type of things. And I tried not to read too much into it because one thing, I don't normally have readings or different things, but this one time I think I had won a thing and it was a numerology reading. And they literally told me one of the readings that came through was stop chasing human enlightenment. If you do, you could reach Buddhahood. And it made sense to me because we're always chasing and trying to understand these events and make sense of them. You're never going to in a human body. You're just not. And the more you fixate on that, the more you're missing experiences and
Right.
the miraculous events and synchronicities in your life because you're just trying to dismiss them or make sense of them instead of just experiencing them. So it makes sense to me.
Well, and we're here for experience, right? But
Exactly.
one thing I've brought up before in past episodes too is if you were to take you and I, or just the idea of what we're talking about right now, and go back 50 to 80 years, this didn't happen. And if it did, well, you know where we'd be. We'd probably be locked up somewhere. So
Yes.
what I would say though, this is the only, and I agree with you that we're here to experience, and I agree that we got to be careful how far we get with this. But I've sat with this quite a bit, and I thought to myself, we're here experiencing, and we're all shifting through our timelines. And this type of content that we are having right now is ramping up big time. When you look at it, if you were to step back and just look at the way the internet age has happened and everything, I mean, 20 years ago, like even like, you know what I mean? So much has changed so quickly. And if that continues at the rate and the pace that it's going, I would assume, just like most things, as you know, that there's purpose and reason for something. So we are leading towards something. And my question to you is, have you ever thought about that? Why is this ramping up and where are we going?
I've had a lot of information on that and different downloads on that and all sorts of stuff. But my understanding when I said I wanted to come back because I didn't want to miss a thing was about the expansion of human consciousness and returning more to the remembrance of our actual what we are. And from my understanding, what we are is, energy, frequency, and when you slow that down, yeah, it forms matter, right? But and that Earth has the density literally to protect us from instantly manifesting because we are so unaware, right? That much I knew. But they've shown me different things, like as the Earth heals itself, there's going to be a lot of geological stuff happening because it's cleansing. It's the soul itself. Everything has soul energy, is what they showed me. So as it cleanses, there's going to be a lot more geological things playing out, but also through those different things, the spiritual awareness will expand. Like in 2012, they told me things would start appearing, which they are now, if you think about it, that people thought would only be sci-fi, mythology or religion or things like that, that people didn't believe in or didn't think could be real. And as more and more of these people have experiences and what they call the veil of forgetfulness thins, all that stuff is reappearing and coming back. But they told me there would be a time where it comes back like full force between like what I call galactic beings, the interdimensional beings, um, the spiritual beings, the truth behind, like religions and different things, that all of that would come to light, and some people would handle it better than others. And that's why some of us were here to help guide the consciousness and the remembrance, and chose to come back or needed to speak these truths so it would start expanding people's awareness. Because if enough people are saying, hey, this happened to me, because part of manifesting reality is your belief system. So if you're conditioned to believe there's only XYZ, unless stuff starts happening outside of XYZ, this is all you're ever going to believe is exists. But the more you expand that, the more experiences you have and the more things that are capable, because we're really honestly limitless creators. They showed me that. Like I said, an Earth's density is kind of a protection of that. So we don't create more chaos and suffering unconsciously. So what I see and what they showed me for like the next 10 years is like that huge shift. And the return of what some people call collective consciousness or Christ consciousness. The profound experience that I was telling you that I had that wasn't a near-death experience was in 2019. When the being Yeshua spoke to me, and it's like, don't call me Jesus, don't worship me. You can do the things that I do, and you're capable of more, and all these other things. But what I was shown was Earth from the time and I was told that my energies have been here since Earth was a thought form. And it showed me how Earth was created and these energies were contained, and how like free will had changed different things. And it was very profound. And I remember I was ugly crying because I was like, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did it. Like how we took free will too far, and created such. And then like Eden had always been here. We had just like basically fallen from frequency. I use some biblical terms because it's the only, reference people can kind of, right. Yeah. So he had shown me that, and that, and I remember promising that I would do better. I would fix it. I'm so sorry, And as all this played out, then like it was like everything around me came alive, and I could hear the trees. I remember there's a big group of trees, but there's three main ones. And I remember like being known and told they were the sentinels, like they watched over things, and like they know everything that has happened through the Earth history and all the beings that have come and went and everything else. And that they were here to like protect and heal us and different things. And I remember just apologizing for forgetting all of that, even, and for the way we treat nature. And, we were meant to be the stewards, not the masters, and everything else. And then at the end of this experience, I sang in some language I do not know, or I don't know if it was like what people call light language or whatever. It felt very indigenous. And the closest I could hear to it when I tried to research it was like the Sami, which I do have some Norse heritage, but the indigenous, the Sami from the North indigenous. But it was a long song. And I remember it was for healing and protection, but it was almost like my consciousness stepped aside and this came through. it was a healing of the land and just of myself and these things. And, I was told to speak my truth and all of these things. It took me to 2021 having that death experience before I finally spoke about my story. So I'm kind of a hermit on the hill, in the sense of I bought a property that you can't even find on GPS because I
Okay.
just to be away in nature. And so they're like, you're going to have to go out and speak and you're going to end up traveling to speak and all these things. I'm like, that was just no. So for 3 years, I'm like, I'm not ready for that. I'm not doing that. I
Mm.
remember that. But yeah, this experience was one of the most changing ones I've ever had because, it showed me how everything was connected and alive and, what we had done to it, as a collective. Because like every time I've had these spiritual experiences, more like you, when they say you, it's more like a collective you, like it's in consciousness that is incarnating. Anyway, but yeah, so with that, and after that, more and more just stuff started coming in, more remembrances and everything else that went with it. But I just understood that we were supposed to be symbiotic with Earth and that we were a conduit. Like some people say, oh, ground in the Earth energies, or oh, you have to connect up here in spirit. But we are of the Earth. So you have to be that circuit, is what Spirit kept telling me.
Mhm.
That conduit. You have to connect to both in order to be like grounded and to channel that much light energy and all of those things. Otherwise, you're like, they showed me like you're like this live wire that, is just sparking everywhere.
Mhm.
And that's why some people are there's so much static. So that was
Yeah.
interesting. Anyway, but thank you.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that. Where the reason I brought up what I said was
Mm,
because in this realm of things, this um around the near death experience, around spirituality, this whole place of what we're talking about now. You've got people who say we're here and we're grounded here. We're not meant to know everything because otherwise, how do we keep our ego and you know, keep things in check? And then there's the people who are like, I want to be more spiritual. Okay, I'm going to try to get to what I'm trying to say here. I have either a remembrance or a future remembrance or a feeling of beauty. And sometimes I'll be talking to people and, you know, the conversation will kind of go into a negative place. I can feel the
mhm,
negativity of it. And I'll say, right, but when you said Christ consciousness and Yahshua, the name Yahshua keeps coming up in a lot of these interviews. It's becoming very obvious there's something there. Um, like Yahshua speaks to people. Uh, Jesus is another name, but for some reason, like you said, you were to name this being
yeah, he
Yahshua.
told me specifically, don't call him Jesus. Not just me. I'm just sharing my experience.
No,
Don't.
absolutely. And
But yeah.
some of it could be because of the, what goes on in this world around it with religion and everything, right? But I have a feeling that we get to a point where, you know, we do understand who we are, where we come from,
Mhm.
and we can create beauty here with
Yes.
still existing and living and having our day to day. But I mean, I'm talking to the audience out there, I'm talking to everyone out there and say, there are things in this life that shouldn't be. I understand this could be part of our evolution to where we're going, but there's no way that anyone out there can say, yeah, everything's perfect. Like everything's great. There's a lot of things that need to be fixed, a lot of things that we need to keep working on, working towards. Like we're not there yet. So, we're not going to all of a sudden realize that we exist bigger than we are and be like, okay, what's the point now? No, we have to keep growing through that.
Yep.
And
Hmm.
that's probably the Christ consciousness that you're talking about, that we are
Hmm.
evolving very quickly
Yes.
and like hold on because it's coming fast. Like it's happening
Yes.
fast. I
Yes.
mean, I haven't been on this world very long. And I know that even as young as like 17, I was trying to read books on near death experiences. By 20, I was reading. By 22, 23, I'm on videos watching the first people experiencing it. And then, like it's happening quick. And now I'm
Mhm.
interviewing people that have had these experiences. So I just, I, I'm just saying, this has really accelerated and I don't think it's going to slow down. So
No,
it's best.
no, they told me it
Yeah.
was literally, especially the last month, all I keep getting, and even my family had some profound experience, is it's go time. Like
Yeah.
there's no turning back, and it's going to accelerate, if anything. And and I remember they compare it to like a roller coaster, like a roller coaster ride. Like, hang on, buckle up.
Yeah, and that's exactly the feeling I just felt when I was
Yeah,
saying that.
yeah.
It was like I felt
Mhm.
myself holding onto a rope and just let's just get through
My
this into,
my brother used to have a bumper sticker, literally, that I think he put on his because he used to race monster trucks, and
Okay.
he had fastest time, and I was able to drive it a few times. But there was this sticker and it said, "Get in, hang on, and shut up," and that's kind of what he told me.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I can kind of understand the analogy for sure. Uh, so you've had these life experiences, the near death experiences, you've had out of body experiences, and all these different things, spiritual communication. I bet you we could go in 1,000 different directions because it seems like,
Right.
yeah, like I don't even think we scratched the surface of the things that you've gone through. Uh, but do you work with individuals? Like, how like
Mhm.
do you help people at this point? Like, I usually try to get information from my guests on how people can get in contact.
Okay.
That kind of stuff. What do you do now with all this knowledge?
Yeah. Well, Spirit guided me to create like some intentional like community. So I have some a weekly group, like sharing group that meets, and I do what I call a celebration of consciousness, where I have some speakers come in and speak and have meditations and things, and sometimes some healing modalities. It's like lots of people don't want to try it out until they get a feel for it. They don't just want to, so they want to learn more about it. So I have those the first Sunday every month, and then I have what's called a psychic circle that we work on different forms of your clair abilities. The second Saturday of the month, and all of those, I give freely, that we do. But I also work as a Reiki shamanic quantum lotus energy healer. I guess that's the best way to put it, all of the things that I do. Because I'm a Reiki master teacher. I'm going to be teaching soon. I'm getting my course ready to teach. Um, so I do various activations. I've worked with Reiki. I've worked with dragon energy, the Fey energies, all sorts of different things that I'm capable of doing. I'm, like I said, a psychic. I don't like all these labels, but psychic mediumship, and I'm a medical intuitive. I have done some psychic surgery. Those, crew done MRIs and different things, but these are just the various things that I came back with that, mostly what I like working with is to help. I have an ability with portals and vortexes. So, like, I can connect the person to their inner child consciousness within the same space time in the quantum field, that brings profound healing. Because a lot of the stuff I notice through the work I do is either ancestral or it's inner child trauma that is creating different disorders within entities in the body. Because, like I told you, it trickles down energetically. We bottle up emotions, and emotions create. And so, if we don't deal with emotions in the moment, they stack up and they'll create, you know, that's why I say pain and anxiety are actually a friend. You need to thank them and ask them what they're trying to teach you, because that's the only body's way of communicating. It's not everybody's like me where it literally hears them speaking to them. So, keep that in mind, and talk to your body, tell it what you'd wish, heal it. But I mean, those are part of the things I teach and talk about that I think are very important to understanding how to maintain the physical vessel and stay at your optimum um, frequency or highest timeline. Energetic hygiene, I teach so much on, because that is so important to do that daily. It really is, because you're constantly, like you said, you're an empath. You're constantly interacting with energies and timelines and dimensions. You don't realize all the things that you're in tune with or bringing into your own energy if you're unaware. You
Oh,
know?
yeah, I'm noticing that more, more and more. And
Yeah.
even before we talked tonight, I turned on a little bit of like spiritual type guided music and I just kind of tune in now as a musician that I'm audio really helps me. So I've just started doing that, learning grounding work. Cause sometimes in the beginning when I started doing this, I'd be talking to people and afterwards I'd be like shaky and buzzing and I'd have emotional breakdowns and I'm like, what is going on? Like, what is happening? And I
Well,
had to
sometimes,
learn, yeah, I had to learn to really
sometimes
ground
like,
myself.
yes, definitely grounded. And sometimes having contact with people who have been to the other side, they carry a higher frequency. So it is naturally healing. So we get shaky and stuff because it's like moving out things that don't really serve us. I've noticed
Yeah.
that. That's common too after like a Reiki session as well, moving energies. But what I want to say, part of what spirit told me is like frequency, sound and frequency, like the work you like you even do, and even music is huge in healing, and is going to be like the future of healing is sound and frequency is what they showed me.
Oh, wow. Well, that's interesting to know as well. What is your main website that people can look up all the things you
It's
do?
same as my name, lorelidrache.com, and it has all my little links that you can find me from there. It's just kind of a landing page. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. This has been amazing. I don't know if you want to share any other experience that you've had. I
Well,
still
there
have,
is one thing that I'm just being called to share of my fifth death experience, and I'm still think that was just December 19th of this last year. So I'm still getting things and remembrances with it. But the major thing, and it was a woman's voice as I was leaving, like I was in the void of consciousness, like outside of creation with that one. And they said, there's only death because you believe in it. And then I had this huge remembrance and other download because, the only separation between us and anything that we perceive that's left the body, it's our belief that they're dead that creates that veil and creates death itself because we believe that. Some people want to have more than one experience. Like we used to live thousands of years, and so it's kind of like that. And the other thing they told me, through Archangel Samael kept saying, you can't keep escaping death in that sense of, um, we just keep recreating it. Like part of my understanding was I kept having all these near death experiences and people have them because, or, or wish that they had them because, they think that's the only way to go back to that level of love and
Mhm.
consciousness. And it isn't. And it
Okay.
isn't. You can reach that at any time. Like I can pull in. Yes, it's not as profound, but I can literally pull in that energy to work with when I work with people, and I can see it and I can feel it. I can feel it in others who have been there. That's how come I know like people who have truly crossed and been in that energy, they carry a different frequency,
Mhm.
than people who maybe just left their body and were looking at it in the operating room compared to who's actually been back to source because they carry this frequency. So my understanding was that like we have to stop creating death within the experience. I,
Wow.
I, I think we might get there at some point, the more the fear is removed, because that was the part of the larval stage. Just because the physical body dies, people think that they're gone,
Right.
and the minute
Right.
you stop believing in that, you can have full contact with your relatives. It's the grief and that it brings your like vibration too low for them to have an easy connection with you.
Okay.
So, like we created death is what I want to say. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I got a lot out of that. I'm actually very happy that you shared that. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
The
I was being called to for some
Yeah,
reason.
yeah, just a quick piggyback off of that for the
Mhm.
audience listening that are wondering how they can get to how can they feel home without the NDE? What are things they could be doing in their life? Is there anything that you could give as advice?
Well, I have a lot of after death communication with my mother. And one of the things she said is to find your joy, that moment of bliss. So you are not thinking in the past or trying to create worrying of the future because you live in the now moment. So it's to be present in every moment. If your thoughts are going anywhere else, dismiss them. I say, like, put them in a balloon, a bubble, and send them off. but to try to stay present, number one, in your thoughts. And like I said, the energetic hygiene of being aware, talking to your body, salt baths, grounding things, but mainly it's to find your joy. Like she told me I had to start dancing again. And now that keeps coming up with a lot of things, that dancing is a form of energy movement and very, very healing, as well as singing. Like
Mm.
I see more and more people going back to that. And maybe that's why a lot of the indigenous cultures always had those as part of their ceremonies. Um, so that's very important, no matter whether, hide in your bedroom and play your favorite tunes, whatever gets you moving and in a state where you are just happy and you're just moving and being present with the music or whatever it is. But those moments of joy, she said, is the key to living your best life on this
Wow.
experience.
I love that. You notice too, when you're a child, we have a much easier time doing that. I have a 2-year-old right now, and before she went to sleep, she was just hitting a little button on a toy and it would make a little sound and she'd start dancing without any thought.
Mhm.
But when you become an adult, you start to put barriers up. And if you just start dancing, you feel like people are judging you and all these things
Yeah.
start to happen. When you're a kid, you're not doing that. When you're like 2 years
Hmm.
old, you're just doing what feels good. And I
Hmm.
think we have to get back to that. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, if we all look like we've gone off our rocker dancing down the streets, so be it. If we're all happy, like why not get there?
Right.
So
You
yeah.
know, my mother said as soon as I could stand, I was always dancing. And
Mm.
it wasn't until the last like 10 years that I like stopped dancing. I used to go out like 5 times a week at least dancing. And so like she was really pushing, and I had full experience with her. Because right after my daughter got the same message, and a medium that was interviewing me did, and they both gave me the message within 24 hours. So I just turned on her favorite music and was dancing, but I wasn't moving my feet because like I have some joint issues, but I was doing the whole upper thing. There's no way I could have moved. And I was standing facing the one wall, and I felt her come with me. And she used to love to spin me. Like she came from the 60s, where they spin you and do the trot and the twist and all that stuff. But that one where they twirl you around, she loved to do that to me. Well, all of a sudden I opened my eyes. I'm on the opposite side of the room, literally up against the wall. There's no way that could have happened. I never moved my feet. Yeah. But I
Wow.
felt her with me, and she was dancing and she was so happy. She's like, "You remember?" But she's really yelling at me because I haven't kept up with and other
Yeah.
mediums keep yelling at me like, you and your daughters are supposed to be dancing together. I'm like, oh, I keep forgetting. Like, but
Right.
I'm trying to be mindful of doing more dancing, and I do my drumming, and I definitely been singing, but
Well, I love that.
even
As
if
a
you can't
vocal
sing,
Yeah,
yes.
as a singing teacher and vocal coach, I love hearing that. That's one of the reasons why I love what I do. Is I also do that, and I think singing does bring frequency up. It can also make you allow you to feel the frequencies that you're feeling, because I'm a very soulful singer. It doesn't mean that it's
Mhm.
dark or sad or negative. That's actually you releasing and letting the energies flow through you,
Exactly.
right?
And
So,
you don't have to use words. Like I
right.
remember after that 7-year-old experience, I would sing this angelic type stuff, but it was just fluctuations of my vocal cords. And we had like the
Mhm.
metal rooftops of the barn, so it echoed the whole neighborhood. But it was beautiful. I don't even know what I was singing, but like and like I told you after that 2019 Christ consciousness, I was singing like that. But I remember like it was healing, like tears, even though I didn't feel like crying, were just like pouring from me. And so
Wow.
many people said when they're singing lately, like it's very healing, like you will just release that. But I think so many people are afraid to be with their emotions.
Mm.
Like if they let them go, they're always trying to control. They told me the key to manifesting is think the thought with love and let it go. Let go of the outcome, everything. Don't try to control your life. That surrender to the divine flow and have faith that everything is going to come to you abundantly. And the more I do that, yeah, that's how my life is. If I just have faith that it will come, and it has always come.
Wow.
But it's when you try to control it or make it happen. The universe wants action steps, mind you, but it doesn't
Hmm.
want you to think about like how they showed it to me. Let's say like you want a house, but you say you want it in Beverly Hills. It has to have 8 bathrooms. I mean, 8 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms or whatever. You're trying to control the outcome instead of like letting things come to you. Like that may not be what's meant for you. So you're cutting off all these boxes of potentiality because you want this one thing and you think you're in control of it.
Right. But instead, what you're saying is to feel the house and
Mm-hmm.
have appreciation for the house and just
And have faith
feel
that
through it.
it's yours. Live
Right.
like it's yours.
Right. So you don't
Yeah.
have to actually see it exactly the way it is.
Mhm.
Okay. That's interesting. Well, I do know
Yeah.
just through hearing people talking about manifestation that you're supposed to go from the heart, from the feeling of it. And
Hmm.
that's how things
How it
come to you.
feels to have it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. The last question I always ask all my guests, and it's just a simple question. I'm interested with you with everything you've had in your life, but and you've probably touched on this a little bit through it, but I always like to get a definitive answer or a definitive description of what you feel. And the question really is just if you look at who you are today and who I am, who we all are, what is the reason for our incarnation here? Why are we here? Why'd we come here?
People like to put that in a box, like everybody's here for the same reason, and they're not. Like my daughter said, she's here to observe. She's a scout. I came here, you know, to do healing to the land. My husband said he remembers he came here for the experience. My other daughter said she, with her pre-birth and her other memories, like she came here to help Earth lift its frequency. Like, I don't feel everybody has a specific purpose. Most of the time, I was told we're just we come here to be, have an experience, just to be, but I don't feel like it's a one size fits all across the board for why we incarnate. Every soul has a different reason, a different experience, and a different thing they're working on.
Mhm.
It's just like, why do some people go to school? There's a zillion different reasons. Same thing.
A bonus question for that is it us coming here, does it help grow soulfully, like who we
Mm-hmm.
are from a not just from a physical, but from a non-physical place? Do you believe that it helps us grow?
Mm-hmm. What I was shown in the different experiences I've had is that like it helps expand. Like the more you expand, so they showed me like the physical incarnation, like to master as a soul, um, is to be spirit yet still be in a physical body, because then you can connect with all the realms of experience, all the dimensions, everything. And there's some things you cannot do in spirit, but you
Mm.
can learn in a physical body to do things spirits do. This makes sense. So the goal is to be this multidimensional being, is what they told me, to master that. And so
Wow.
for me, it's a part of that's it. So once you've mastered that, and some come back to teach, like they showed, like there's a lot of us here that are just teachers,
Hmm.
in that sense. Like they always give me the Hogwarts reference because they like to give me movie references. That doesn't mean we ever stop growing, but the higher we can achieve that spirituality in a physical form, the higher we can attain in the spiritual realms as well, whether we're incarnated or disincarnated, the higher things that we can achieve and access is my
Wow.
understanding.
Thank you so much for sharing
You're
that.
welcome.
Thank you for being on tonight. I've really appreciated this talk. It's been insightful. I'll probably want to listen back because sometimes I hear things and the first time I go, okay. And then after I've heard it back a few times, I watch some of my episodes back with my guests because I find the more times I do that, I understand a little bit more. And then there's sometimes where I say something, I'm like, wow, Joe, that was insightful. Where did that come from? I don't even remember saying it. So sometimes I feel like I'm in just an autopilot. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but
Yeah,
I don't know.
I've rewatched them as well because sometimes I'm channeling or what spirit wants me to say, and I don't remember when that happens per se. I mean, I do, but I don't. I was like, wow, that was profound. That was an
Yeah,
insight I didn't realize I
right. Absolutely.
had.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Well, this has been really lovely. I usually turn to the audience and say, please keep sharing, liking, subscribing. I really appreciate all the people that have been joining the Soul Inspired family. You guys are amazing, and keep the discussions going in the comments. I love seeing the discussions because then we can all talk about what we're feeling and seeing, and there's no real, I mean, if it's super negative, I try to keep it, I don't keep those going, but generally I like the discussions to go through to see everybody's thoughts and feelings. But thank you again for everybody for subscribing. Thank you, Lorelei, for being on. I would encourage everyone to check out your stuff, and I appreciate being on the Soul Inspired tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a beautiful experience. Thank you.
So